I'd just like to hear from you on the issue of expertise, because with your background in as a lawyer, obviously you would have to find and interview experts, and sometimes you would have two experts, all the credentials in the world, with difference of opinion. I mean, that's what happens. The prosecution finds their expert and the defense finds their expert.
Yeah.
So really walk us through expert testimony and what it means to be an expert.
Yeah.
And, you brought up some interesting information about the judge's instructions to jurors, because they are called upon to then judge two experts debating, and what right, according to some of the logic we've already heard, what right would any of these lay people, jurors, have to disagree with either one of those experts?
Yeah. And I can appreciate, that kind of a statement from him saying, look, I'm a guy with a bachelor's and I've read a couple of books. What right do I have?
Yeah, it makes sense.
It totally makes sense. But the reality is we do this all the time in our everyday walk-a-day lives. But we also do this in courts of law. Specifically, the jury is almost always made up of a jury of lay people who don't have expertise in any particular field that might help them in the determination of the case before them, whether it's a criminal case where freedom is on the line. Sometimes it's life and death. In civil cases, it's usually money or some policy issue, whatever it might be, where a jury of lay people is being exposed to witnesses, and those witnesses are experts, and now they have to judge which of these experts do I actually believe, or do I actually think has the truth on their side. And even in bench trials where the judge is the one who decides the matter, the judge isn't a PhD usually in some esoteric or specialized field, and he's got to make a determination. She's got to make a determination on this as well. So give you an example. There's model jury instructions or sample jury instructions, and they're different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but here are some we found. When a judge instructs a jury on weighing expert testimony, the judge would say, such opinion testimony should be judged like any other testimony. You may accept it or reject it. So who are you as a non-expert? Well, you're the jury. You may accept it or reject it and give it as much weight as you think it deserves, considering the witness's education and experience. So it's not like it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. The reasons given for the opinion and all the other evidence in the case. In other words, who are you to judge? Well, you're the jury. And juries judge expert testimony all the time, especially when there's conflicting experts who are speaking on a particular matter. So people with dazzling degrees and a lot of letters after their name, alphabet people who come and, give you their expertise based on the PhDs and the MAs and the CSVs and the whatever is coming after their names. There's another guy on the other side of it who's saying the exact opposite. And it's your job not to say, well, forget it. They cancel each other out. They don't. You have to weigh what this person says and what that person says, and whether you believe them or not, or you think that they've made a compelling case. Now, the other part to this too is that before those experts even get there, often they can be subject to what's called a Daubert challenge in federal court. So there's this case. It's the standard now for determining whether an expert can offer a scientific evidence or a scientific opinion on a particular matter. And it doesn't have to be like hard sciences like engineering or physics or something. It can be other sciences as well. And there's a multi-factor test you go through. I won't go into all those because the details could be quite boring. But one of the things that's interesting is, and this goes right to what Rhett McLaughlin was saying, is that trust the specialists, trust those, the consensus of which disagree with sort of conservative evangelical Christianity. That used to be the standard in courts of law, where an expert could opine about something if their opinion comported with the consensus of the experts or the consensus of science. Well, that got changed. And I think it got changed rightly so, with the Supreme Court eventually ruled that a opinion or evidence that comes in as scientific doesn't have to comport with the consensus of scientific scholarship on a particular matter. so long as the methodology used does comport with a generally accepted principles of scientific inquiry, and that the sample set was the right sample set, and a bunch of other factors that come into play. The point here is this: is that just because what you're saying doesn't align with the consensus of scholarship or the consensus of science, doesn't mean it's wrong. It might be groundbreaking. It might be the kind of thing that in this particular instance is the right way to go. Mm-hmm. So we have to base it not on the conclusions that are reached, but on the methodology that leads to those conclusions. Is it actually sound? And I think that's a very wise principle to take. So if we apply that in this particular instance, you have someone like Rhett who is saying, we really can't question the majority, the bulk of people, as it were, or the consensus of scholarship on these issues. We really can't challenge this. Sure we can. We do it all the time. And we have specific examples of that we could talk about and probably will talk about during the course of the minutes we have remaining for the show, where we wouldn't be where we are today, scientifically speaking, if people didn't buck the consensus of scholarship.
Right.
We wouldn't be. That's what science is all about. It's about challenging the accepted norms, but doing it responsibly with valid methodology, repeatable protocols, so that you can say, okay, that's good, solid science. Just because someone happens to believe that Adam and Eve were actual people, and that goes against evolutionary theory, for example, doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that they're not in the consensus. But now take a look at the actual evidence. Why do they come to those conclusions? Mm-hmm. Why do people believe in the fine-tuning of the universe? Or why do people believe in the specified complexity of the design of life? Someone like Stephen Meyer and other people, why do they think that? So when you consider that to be the possibility, you do have mainstream. And when I say mainstream, what I mean is not people who are just who are scientists who just do ministry, although nothing's wrong with that either. And we have great friends who are like that, but people who are involved in academic, scientific, or humanities area research, who are in the mainstream, in the one sense, and they are conservative Christians, or they believe in the authority of the Bible. I think of Ard Louis out of Oxford. I think of John Lennox, who you've already mentioned, out of Oxford. James Tour at Rice University, who is doing groundbreaking work in microbiology and these kind of and biochemistry and these kinds of things. Francis Collins, former head of the NIH, or head of the NIH, he might be. Hugh Ross, Dan Wallace, who has forgotten more about New Testament Greek than most people will ever learn. Gary Habermas, expert on the resurrection, one of the foremost in the world on the resurrection. Rebecca Carlson, who is a scientist out of Purdue University. These are people who are working scientists, who are actually working researchers, who are come to a different conclusion than most of the consensus. Judge the merits of their arguments, not whether they happen to align with the majority. I think that's the way we should go here. Yeah. So who are we to question? Well, we're people who have brains in our head and minds with which we can assess the evidence on our own.